Before the affirmative begins, we would like to thank the judging panel, Mr. William Brewer, Ms. Elaine McArdle, Dr. Scott Dethridge, Mr. Mark Oppenheimer, President John Sexton, Ms. Melissa Maxey Wade, and Mr. Scott Wan. Thank you to Mr. David Baker for his moderating. Thank you to Mr. John Bickel and Mr. William Brewer and their law firm once again for creating this wonderful event. And many thanks to New York University and again President John Sexton for giving us a unique opportunity. Thank you to our opponents from Bellaire High School and their coach, Mr. Russell Rack. And finally, a huge thanks for Ms. Cheryl Potts. Without her, we would just be a bunch of kids with bad stutters. So let's begin. According to James Lovelock, Honorary Visiting Fellow of Green College, Oxford, we have no time to experiment with visionary energy sources. Civilization is in imminent danger and has to use nuclear, the one safe available nuclear energy source. Lovelock is one of many noted environmentalists who have come to recognize the benefits of nuclear energy. The main reason Americans don't use nuclear energy is essentially because of the unjustified and irrational fear that they have. Green lobbyists have caused the people of the United States and the government to reject the safest, cleanest fuel that is available on the planet. It is because we agree with Lovelock that we stand resolved that the United States federal government should substantially increase alternative energy incentives in the United States by substantially increasing funding for nuclear fuel recycling and reprocessing. This will help mitigate first the climate crisis, second the economic malice, and finally the global proliferation concerns. So what stands in nuclear energy's way? Regulatory risks prevent proper nuclear development in the United States today. Investors are not averse to nuclear power, but rather investors have rejected the excessive regulatory risk and costs that are imposed by the government. Providing nuclear energy to homes would only be a little more expensive than our current fossil fuel plants, except that the federal government excessively regulates the nuclear energy. In order to remain competitive in a world of ever-expanding nuclear power, the United States needs to develop a comprehensive method to resolve the nuclear waste storage crisis, which is the main barrier to new plants. We believe that the federal aid to fund nuclear fuel recycling and reprocessing, as well as a recommitment to nuclear energy, would best serve U.S. interests. Last year, the federal government substantially cut the budget for reprocessing technology. The Appropriations Committee of the House cut funding for the Advanced Fuel Cycle Initiative, AFCI, to $120 million, despite the fact that the Bush administration had requested $302 million. The Appropriations Committee also prohibited any funds from being spent on actual construction of new proposed facilities. This is absolutely prohibitive to new nuclear energy development, as the current system for nuclear waste disposal is extremely inefficient. Funding for nuclear fuel recycling and reprocessing is vital for the United States to recommit to the nuclear industry, and the nuclear industry is vital to maintaining key U.S. interests abroad and at home. So what's behind the fear of nuclear energy? Critics of nuclear power often point to incidents such as Chernobyl and 3 Mile Island to express safety and environmental concerns. Others look to fears of nuclear terrorism and how the spread of nuclear power would mean more accessibility to nuclear materials in order to build weapons. However, many fears about nuclear power are myths, and mostly creations of flawed logic and misrepresentations. When looking at Chernobyl, for example, Lewis and Spencer are quick to point out that Chernobyl was the result of human error and poor design, something that would not have happened in the United States given the safety requirements that are required in this country. Anti-nuclear activists have caused more harm to the affected populations than has the radioactive fallout from the actual incident. The 3 Mile Island incident actually resulted in no deaths or injuries. As far as terrorist and proliferation concerns go, reprocessing should quell fears about weapon creation and militarization of nuclear power. Weapons require a very different kind of plutonium than that used for nuclear power or that provided by nuclear reprocessing. The chemical process used doesn't separate the isotopes in a way desired by those looking for nuclear weapons. Furthermore, the decline of the nuclear industry is actually detrimental to preventing proliferation. Nuclear experts will have to find work somewhere else, and with the decline of the nuclear power industry, will turn instead to nuclear weaponry to find appropriate monetary compensation. A robust U.S. nuclear industry would keep nuclear scientists at home and working on energy production rather than turning to abroad for work for, in fact, turning abroad for rogue nations and terrorist organizations in building weapons of mass destruction. The rest of the world is moving forward with nuclear power. The only question is if the United States, leader and promoter of a safer world, is involved or not. The International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, and the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty could both benefit with increased US backing. International discussions about nuclear power and the promotion of peaceful nuclear technologies are being conducted, and given US political clout, the United States could play a crucial role in shaping those discussions.